Okay, welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Anita Brolox and I'm the head of outreach here at protocols.io, and I'm excited to do this webinar with you all today. And today's webinar will be on how to bring structure to your research with protocols.io. Just a couple notes before we get started. We are recording this webinar, so just please be aware of that. If you do have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them into the Q&A. You should see a little Q&A box on the bottom of your Zoom. It has two little speech bubbles, and if you click on that, you'll be able to submit a question, and we'll have time to get to questions at the end. So please feel free to put questions into that. So yeah, let's get started. Protocols.io really is a platform that allows you to develop and share reproducible methods. And there are a lot of functionalities that I will just walk you through in this webinar today. And the key insights really are, if you're using the protocols.io platform for your research, it allows you to manage research data and your protocols. If you do use protocols.io very early on in your research, it can really also simplify your protocol development. So you don't have to have a ready protocol to use the platform. You can even start using it for when you're still developing your protocol. Also, we do have a lot of features that allow you to simplify teamwork and improve collaboration. And protocols can be kept private, but also we do have an open side, so you can also publicly share protocols and even receive a DOI for your methods. And overall, if you do use protocols.io, you can, on the long run, you can really save yourself and your team time, and you can really keep all your work organized. Protocols.io really has two products. One is our protocol repository, which is all open access. It's always free, and you can publish your protocols. And if you do publish your protocols, there's also an option to receive a DOI, a digital object identifier, for your methods. And then if you're publishing a paper, for example, you can include the DOI of your paper into your materials and methods section of your You can include a DOI of your protocol into the materials and methods section of your paper. And then we also have another site, which we call protocols.io Carbon. And the Carbon version of protocols.io is really for private collaboration. It comes with enterprise level security, and you can have shared notebook records, and you can have unlimited private files. There's premium technical support. And really the Carbon product is for if you're not sharing things openly. So for example, if you're working in a biotech and you want to keep things private, you would use the Carbon version of protocols.io. But on the open side of protocols.io, it's, as I mentioned, it's open access. We right now have about 7,000 public protocols on the site, and there's a large diversity of disciplines. So you can use it for biology protocols, for chemistry methods, computational workflows, even for clinical trials, really anything that's a checklist or instructions. And if you're new to protocols.io and you just want to check out some protocols and see what they look like, the welcome page is a really good place to start, because we always highlight some featured protocols down here, and you can check out some of the newly published protocols. And if you do look at the protocols, one thing you'll note is, I have a little video clip here. Let's see if this works. One thing you'll notice is that the protocols, they're not static PDFs, but they're interactive and dynamic protocols. So we do encourage everybody to create protocols in an easy to follow step-by-step format. And you can see there are different tabs here, so you can add a little abstract, you can add very detailed materials for what materials you use for a protocol. And if you do publish a protocol, of course, it gets a protocol citation. And then also there's a metrics tab, so you can see how your protocol is doing and how many people are viewing it, how many people are exporting it, do people mention it on social media. So you can see all these things from that. And the three key elements really of the protocols.io platform are our file manager and workspaces. And the third one is our editor. And now I will just go quickly through all of these three elements to show you a little bit more about what they look like. And we'll get started with workspaces. And workspaces really are virtual environments where people come together and collaborate on a topic. And workspaces can be either visible or it can be invisible. So for example, if a workspace is visible, that means it has a visible profile page. If somebody comes to protocols.io and searches for that workspace, they'll be able to see the workspace profile. But you can also set up invisible workspaces, and that means it will be hidden. So only members of that particular workspace will be able to see it. So, and you'll notice if a workspace is invisible or visible with the little icon. So if it's visible, it will have a little earth icon, and if it's a invisible one, it has this lock. So, and if you're setting up a workspace, just please be aware of that. So we will ask you, would you like to make your workspace visible or invisible? And the workspaces are great for really any team size. So if you have you can have a workspace for even just yourself or with 2 people, or you can have it up to a couple hundred people. So this is an example of a visible workspace, and you can see there's like over 400 members and over 100 publications. So the visible workspaces are really for open collaboration and open sharing. But it can also, of course, be for private collaboration, but I'm just showing an example of an open one here. But it's really great because with the workspaces, you really keep all the research and all the research data and all the protocols in one place. So it's one central place, and this is where everything really happens. And you can share protocols, but also you can share resources, you can start discussions, and also there are a lot of other little features that really help you to improve collaboration. So for example, you can manage, there's like a task manager that you can use to plan out tasks if you're using it for a smaller internal team, for example, and things like that. And then our file manager. The file manager really is where everything happens. So if you are creating protocols, or if somebody shared a protocol with you, you'll see it in your file manager. And the great thing about the file manager is also it does support any other file type. So if you're looking to share any spreadsheets or PDFs or presentations or whatever it might be, if you want to share that with others or keep it for yourself, you can add other file types in there as well. So it's not only the protocols that you're creating on protocols.io. And also in the file manager, you have you have basically all the controls and all the commands that you need to have for protocols. You can archive things, you can audit protocols, and you can also export. So we do want to make it very easy for you to also back up things and export. So if you want to connect to Dropbox, Google Drive, and Box, or OneDrive, you can very easily do that and back up your things and move them to other platforms as well. And the file managers do have enterprise-grade security, and as I mentioned, backup functionality. And then the last element is our editor. And so in the editor, you'll have a lot of options to really create protocols that fit your needs. And as you saw in the video earlier, the protocols are not static PDFs, but they're interactive and dynamic. So in the editor here, you have all these options to create these individual steps. You can even create sections. So for example, here, step 1 is a section, and then starting step 2 and 3 is a different section. You can color code sections like that and give it section titles. You can put little step icons if you'd like to. And then here on the right-hand side, we have all these components that really allow you to bring a lot of structure and clarity into your protocol. So there are a lot of wet lab components, but also if you're doing any computational work, you can also use the computational components. So for example, you can link out to data sets, you can add software, you can add command lines and things like that. So there's really a lot of flexibility here. And then on the top here, it's a little small, but you have like general text editing tools. And also one thing that's very great is you can add even videos and images. So if you want to add a video or an image to one of the steps or to multiple steps, you can add photos. So photos are really great. And also the editor, it does have an option to edit things concurrently. So you can invite others to actually edit the protocol with you. So here it only shows my picture because I'm the only one editing it, but you can invite others to at the same time edit a protocol with you. And then another thing that's great is we have a history. So especially if you are working on protocols together with others, you can exactly see what kind of changes have been made to the protocol and when and by who. So it really allows you to track the edits. And yeah, so once you created a protocol, every time you create a protocol, it always starts out private. So you're the only person who can see it. And then it's up to you if you want to share it privately with others or if you want to make it public. And you can always keep things private. So that's very important to know, but it always starts out private. You can keep it private or you can make it public. And one thing that's great for whether you keep the protocol private or if you publish it, one of our key functionalities is version control. So once you created a protocol and then you keep working on it and there might be a couple tweaks here and there or changes that you need to make for optimization, you can always create new versions of protocols. So whenever you're changing something, you can always create updates and you can create new versions. And if you are, so for example, if you shared the link to version 1 with one of your colleagues or with somebody, and now there's a new version, a version 2 available of this protocol, it will tell them, oh, I think I don't have this, but they will get a little pop-up that tells them there's a new version of this protocol available, and then they can select if they want to see the older version or the newer version. So that way we always do guide everybody to the newest version, but we do preserve all the older versions too. And there's actually a compare functionality that lets you put version 1 and version 2, for example, right next to each other, and it kind of highlights the changes that have been made from version 1 to version 2. Or you can even do version 1 and version 10 if there would have been a version 10. Another thing that's great is if you do have the protocols in this step-by-step format, we do have, every protocol has a run button. So you can actually, when you're in the lab or on wherever you're doing your experiment on the field, you can always click run. And that gives you this checklist-like functionality where you can check off every single step as you complete it. You can add notes to steps or images. And everything that you do here gets a timestamp. And if you did use our components, so for example, if you use the timer component, there'll be like an automatic timer that you can start. Or if you use the amount component, you can scale a protocol or scale individual steps of the protocol. And so if you do use the components to build your protocol, that's really good. Yeah, and so everything, as I mentioned, gets timestamped here. And then in the end of your experiment, you have an experiment record, which is kind of like an electronic lab notebook record. And one more thing that I wanted to mention here before we open up to questions is we know scientists or researchers can be busy sometimes, and if you do wish to get your protocol on protocols.io, we do have a protocol import service. So if you do have your protocol written down in a paper lab notebook, you can actually take a picture, or if you might not have it in a paper lab notebook, but if you have a PDF or whatever, you can email that, or you can send that to us, and we can turn it into a very nice structured protocol on protocols.io. And if you would like to take advantage of this service, you can feel free to go to this link. It's just protocols.io/we enter protocols, and that's where you can submit your protocol. And the flow for this really is, so we have an internal editorial team that will review your protocol, and we will then import and format your protocol to a protocols.io protocol. And after that, you will review your protocol, and then we will, once it looks good, we will reassign it to you privately, and you can either keep it private or you can publish it at any time. So feel free to check that out if this is something that you think might be interesting for you. And I would like to finish off by just mentioning that there are a lot of organizations encouraging the use of protocols.io. That includes journals and publishers that are recommending protocols.io on their manuscript submission. It includes funders that are requiring or recommending protocols.io in grant guidelines and policies, but also more and more institutions are getting campus-wide licenses for more reproducible research and publications on campus. And yes, with that, I would like to open it up to questions if anybody has any questions. Okay. So if you do have questions, feel free to put it into the Q&A. So there is a button that says Q&A. If you just click on that, you'll be able to submit a question. And it looks like there's one question. One question says, can you group protocols that belong together? That's a great question. And I think what they mean is, so of course you can have groups where you can have all the protocols that belong into that group, but oftentimes you have like a workflow that might have individual protocols that are individual protocols, but they kind of go along together because you might have different things you need to do for one sample. And for that, we do have this option to create what we call a protocol collection. So you can actually create a protocol collection where you can put in different individual protocols, and then it's a protocol collection. So you can have like these individual protocols bundled up together in this one collection. I hope that answers the question. And it looks like there's another question. Can you publish a protocol from a private group? That's another great question. And yes, you can, but if you do publish a protocol from a private group, it won't be associated with that group. So if you have an invisible workspace and you publish a protocol that's from that workspace, it won't be associated with that workspace because the workspace is invisible. So others won't be able to see it. But also it does depend on what the workspace settings are. So if a new workspace is created, the admin always has an option to choose between different settings. And there's actually an option that says that prevents people from publishing protocols that are in a workspace. So if that's the setting for your group, then you won't be able to publish. But if that's not a setting, then you would be able to publish. So it really depends on what your supervisor, whoever set up the group for you or the workspace, chose for the settings. But a lot of people, if you're part of an academic research lab, a lot of times what also happens is the lab might have two workspaces. One is for public sharing and one might be for private collaboration. And then you could have, so you could have two workspaces, and the one for, if you're ready to share things publicly, you could put it into the publicly facing workspace. And if it's private things, you will keep it in the invisible workspace. Great. So those were all the questions I saw for now. If you have any other questions, or if you would like to see any more things about protocols.io, feel free to always send me an email. I'm just at anita@protocols.io. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today.